Hey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, my cap's on my camera.
Oh no.
Also, I called you, which indicates I'm ready, but now I'm gonna get up and get tea, so just a moment.
Take all the time you need, friend.
Alright. We got episode 14 today. It's about the 19th episode we've put out, I think, but we like our A's and our B's and our subsets.
We do. And I think that just shows how nerdy we are about making sure everything is just to the T organized.
I like subcategories. I like when you put bullet points like sub-bullet points. And, Yeah. Victoria and I are coming at you guys with the most impeccable energy today because you and I have both finally had some downtime and realized that that does not make us any less stressed out and high-strung.
Seeing when we get to episode, like our 20th episode that we've recorded, will we have it to do like a celebration or something? Or like, do we want to wait until we actually have a numbered episode 20?
Victoria, I have personally cancelled my own birthday the last 2 years. I don't know why you think I care about milestones. If you want me to do something for any of our episodes because it represents something to you, you know that I will, because I do whatever you tell me. This whole project is me not being able to say no to you. We're having a great time.
We are.
What are we doing today?
I do have a plan for your birthday, though.
I don't have a birthday.
Today, we are doing... Sorry, you have an unbirthday.
I don't have one of those either. What are we doing today, Victoria?
Today, Sloan and I are having a little bit of a fun episode where we're going to talk about a museum and just have fun with it. This is a fun episode.
Yes, we are not doing in-depth literary analysis stretched across 3 episodes. Thank you to everybody who listened to that, and we do have a giveaway relating to the 3-part episodes 13 that we just released, which we will be telling you about later on in the episode. And yeah, Victoria and I have decided to go our separate ways and each come back with an interesting museum that we think applies a unique, or not unique because nothing's actually unique, but a unconventional or interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach. Victoria, how do you feel if we roll for initiative on who goes first?
I would love that, so let's do it. You're gonna have to roll for me because I don't have my dice with me.
Okay, yes, well we know my dice are always near at hand. Alright, you know what, I'm gonna use my metal dice that my very loving partner gave me for my birthday that didn't happen last year. I just say, people, I don't have an issue with getting older, I just don't like dates or milestones. I am fully willing to acknowledge my age. So I'm gonna use those. Victoria, I'm gonna use the ones from the bath bomb for you, because those bath bombs I believe I gave you for your birthday. I got a 19 for myself and I got a 5 for you. What's your modifier?
So it was +1, so...
I like that you know that off the top of your head. That was more a joke about, like, are you invested in going first? Clearly not.
My modifier for initiative, Sloan, is very low.
I'm the DM, so I don't technically have a modifier, but a 19 is a 19. Wow, we've made these people listen to like 5 minutes of that so far. That's great. That's probably gonna get cut down. Yeah, so I guess I'm gonna talk a little bit about my interesting museum to start with. I will just say this episode might end up having like a somewhat clickbaity title. We might end up calling it Strange Museums or something to that effect. I consciously chose not to do things like the Gopher Museum of Alberta, just because I do still want there to be not just trivia, but some actual interesting either social history or something of consequence. Don't get me wrong, museums like the Gopher Museum of Alberta are tons of fun. I think they're great. I think they're an excellent way to spend an afternoon. But not just like a collection of oddities, like actually having some good, significant historical work behind this. Would you agree with that, Victoria?
Yeah, I do kind of get into that with mine. Even though you're going to be like, what the heck, how is this interdisciplinary at all? What the fuck, Victoria? You'll see.
Oh, no, that's legit. And I'm not specifically targeting the Gopher Museum of Alberta. For all I know, they might actually do some really good historical work in terms of prairie hunting and pelts and historical pest control. That might all be there, but my understanding is that it's more of a novelty taxidermy, and maybe even in that like kind of natural sciences side of the museum. So we have both endeavored to pick history or kind of human past rather than natural past. And yeah, so my museum that I found that I thought was really interesting and I want to tell you about is the Musée des Ondes Emile Berliner. That was a whole string of butchered French for anyone who is confused by what they just heard. For the duration of the episode, I will be referring to it in its Anglicized title of the Emile Berliner Museum of Sound. It is in Montreal. I really wanted to do something Canadian. So, Victoria, does the name Emile Berliner strike anything for you? Because you're a little bit more interested in art and cultural history than I am.
No.
Okay. Cool.
But that's okay. I'm excited to learn all about this person.
Yeah, so that's cool. I'm not going to focus too much on the person. The museum does borrow its name from him. He is the, I'm going to get into a little bit, inventor of the phonograph. Eventually ends up spending a good portion of his life in Montreal. Montreal, if you're not aware, is kind of a cultural center in Canada, especially for things like music and the performing arts. The reason I specifically picked this museum when I was doing my, Googling of weird museums, unusual museums, strange museums Canada, interesting museums Canada, those sorts of search terms, is we often forget that music is itself a primary source. This particular museum has a couple of really interesting sound archives that are available online, being part of why I want to draw your attention to it. But yeah, just the fact that music as a form of entertainment does have some really valuable primary source information from two perspectives, because you can look at the lyrics and you can definitely analyze lyrics in the time period that they situate themselves in. We've talked previously in this show about Black Dance in Canada. We've also talked a little bit about protest music when we did our Chicago 7 episode. But at the same time, we can look at the way that culture is disseminated, and that is done through recording and broadcasting, which is the really bread and butter of this particular museum. So this museum has been around for almost 3 decades. It had its conception, we'll say, in 1992. Essentially a group of enthusiasts coming together who wanted to talk about the history of recording as well as broadcasting, with a big emphasis on the 20th century technological revolution as a cultural revolution. So they talk a lot about the culture shift, which ends up happening in the second half of the 20th century, and the way that popular media comes from that. And also specifically the role that Montreal played in the development of Canadian pop culture in the late Victorian period into the 20th century. So as I've already said, the museum itself is named for the inventor of the gramophone. The gramophone is not invented in Montreal. However, the inventor, Emile Berliner, does end up spending a good portion of his life and does end up spending a lot of time on manufacturing the device in Montreal, which I think is very, very cool. Victoria, I'm curious, in your kind of academic career and just the fact that you're a little bit more interested in art history, have you engaged with music as a primary source very much?
No, and that's actually kind of interesting because music, it's such an integral part of our life. It's mixed in, throughout history. It's one of those most tangible bits we have to the past. I remember recently there was this discovery of a manuscript in a monastery and people from the medieval period, and people actually sang it. It was interesting because it hadn't been heard in hundreds of years. So it's interesting to see how music is a tie that we don't exactly look at as a connection to the past. Sorry, my dogs keep on asking to go in. Is it okay if I just open the door?
Yeah, please. We're a dog-friendly podcast.
Yeah. Okay, Poppy, you can come on the bed, but you have to go to sleep, okay? Sorry, as I was saying, it's interesting because, and the other dog wants in, great.
They come in pairs.
must be sleepy. Come on in. Come on, you can lie down. Come on in. Here we go. Anyways, so music is one of the ways we express ourselves as a culture, as people. Music has been used for therapy. It has been used as a form of expression. So yeah, I think music as a primary source, I absolutely can see it as that because, like, we treat books, literature, poetry, to a degree, art as a primary source. I've used novels as primary sources in my history courses before, so it's...
I think even in my introductory English class, way back when, one of the, like, term paper essay topics that you could write your final paper on is music literature. And I think general consensus when you look at a definition of literature, if you accept that songs are recorded in language that fits, or recorded in written language. But yeah, I think that that's very, very good. I think that we also can look at literature as a primary sources for sure. I think there's situations too where you can argue that something sort of exists as a secondary source, just depending on the way that it's composed and the time period afterwards that it's composed. But yeah, I think that this museum is interesting because they seem to, in all their exhibits, and they have some rotating exhibits as well as some permanent ones that I'm going to talk about a little bit, they seem really dedicated in tracking both the progression of technology and the progression of the art that is communicated through that technology. Their first public exhibit debuted in 1996. As a museum focused on 20th century history, I think that it does a really good job of not falling into periodization, but really showing a slow progression and the steps that make that progression possible. As I was going through the website and clicking on some of the links they have and just sort of looking at the titles of the exhibits that they've run over the years, I was reminded of something that one of my professors discussed a couple of years back in class. And what he talked about is that history is a series of contingencies and agencies. And you can see how art is usually an expression of agency or an attempt at creating agency, and how that differentiates itself and lends itself differently to the contingency of different broadcasting mediums being available. The permanent exhibitions of this museum, which there's some information available online, they have over 120 physical objects that pertain to broadcasting, either what's being broadcast itself or how it's being broadcasted. Those are available for public visitation. They also have a really interesting sort of rolling exhibits. They've done most recently, and I think still currently, if you happen to be in Montreal, they have 100 years of broadcasting in Montreal. So as a local museum and a collective of local people, they are really trying to tie things into relevancy-wise their geographical region. They also have a really interesting exhibit that they ran a little while ago that presumably they still have the materials for, and there's some information archived online about Montreal radio during the wartime, speaking about the Second World War. They have what I think is my favorite title of any exhibition ever, and it's From Gramophone to Satellite. And the thing I love about that is visually, the shape of a gramophone, at least in my mind, and the shape of a satellite are so similar that to me is a really nice flow and a really nice kind of, not couplet, but a pairing. They have other stuff. They have 50 years of television in Montreal. They have an interesting one, which I clicked on and there wasn't much information available, but they at one point ran something called Goodbye Broadway, Bonjour Montreal, which I think really speaks to that culture shift. And in Canada, as with many Western nations, we're very dominated by American television and American media, and things like Broadway, things like New York City, things like Hollywood really dominate our idea of what is attaining something in the arts and what is success in the arts. That I think that would be really cool to look at the role that Canadian media centers have played. Another big reason that I chose this museum is even if you're not going to be able to visit it in person, they have a really well curated website of information. The website is fully accessible in both French and English, and that's not just my Chrome browser translating that to it and having like weird things. It is a fully well done English version of the website, as well as presumably the French is well done. I don't speak French, but Montreal, I assume, assume that that's the default. Some other interesting online resources that this museum makes available through their website is 2020 was actually the 100-year anniversary of public radio broadcasting in Canada, which is very cool to me because, again, this museum does a good job of showing you the utilities of radio for things like wartime, things like public service, those sorts of things. But public radio and radio intended for entertainment, only existing in Canada for 100 years, feels accurate but wrong. Like, as a historian, like, all the numbers check out. But it doesn't seem like that 100th anniversary should have happened in my lifetime. It seems like it should have happened way before.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
Yeah, as well, they have access to a couple of audio archives that are, again, Canadian music. I've worked a little bit in my undergraduate career with online audio archives, but they tend to, again, be American just because the US has things like the Library of Congress. They have those sources that are very well curated and very well publicized. The other reason I chose this museum, Victoria. How would you describe me? Who do you think I was prior to my undergraduate career?
So my picture of you now is different of the picture of I had you like when I first met you. I saw you as this stoic, edgy, like
I'm still stoic and edgy, goddammit.
You're a little marshmallow, a roasted marshmallow, crusty on the outside, soft on the inside.
I've outed myself completely because we have a Gmail account for this podcast and I accidentally was logged into that on YouTube. And you saw my YouTube history and the music I was listening to, and you were worried about me. So, like many Canadian children who went through junior high and high school, I did not have access to Hot Topic. However, the real ones will remember HMV. Do you remember HMV, Victoria?
Yes. So HMV was still open when I was in high school, and I would visit it every day.
Yeah, HMV, it had the gift section. It's where I got my Doctor Who TARDIS pillow that my partner steals and claims as his own. It's the source of a lot of great things. I think I probably had some other merch at different points of my life. You know, we didn't have Hot Topic, but we had the gift section of HMV. What does HMV stand for, Victoria?
I don't know. Home Music Video.
No, but good guess. That's what I thought. HMV actually stands for His Master's Voice.
What?
Which was a slogan of a gramophone producer here in Canada for a long time, one of the manufacturers. And what it referred to was a dog who heard a recording of his master's voice played on this gramophone responded as if it was actually his master speaking to him. So the dog could recognize his master's voice through the gramophone. That was meant to be a testament to how good and real and accurate the sound quality was of this particular gramophone. That is an entirely useless fact that I now get to share.
I love that.
That
is so cool.
Yeah. So micro audience of listeners. There you go. But His Master's Voice is also the title of the twice annual publication that the museum puts out, basically pertaining to itself and the exhibitions it puts on. And I really like this particular publication because it actually gives some good insights into the methodology that a small, largely volunteer-run, non-for-profit museum puts on. So, I've talked a little bit about the different sorts of curated collections that they put on, the different exhibitions put on. I recognize that a lot of those are in the past. And Montreal may be a bit of a journey for many of our listeners. However, if you are interested just in seeing the ways that small museums curate things and the sort of exhibitions that they put on, even just from a technical standpoint or a methodology standpoint, I recommend even just checking out their website to take a look at the way that they lay their newsletter and their publication out. It was very interesting to me, and yeah, I am really happy to have stumbled across this, and if I ever found myself in Montreal, I would probably endeavor to go see it.
Yeah, it sounds so cool. Yeah, I would want to go there. I haven't been to Montreal in years, but I feel like now as an adult I would have so much more fun.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I feel that way.
Although going to...
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, going to Sugar Shacks, getting Tire la Neige stuck all into your winter gloves, and they all getting crusty and all over your face. Oh man, nothing like it. Nothing like it. And for our non-Canadian listeners, so tir la neige basically is you take a whole section of clean, fresh snow, take some boiling hot maple syrup, and you thinly pour it out onto the snow, and you quickly roll it up on a popsicle stick. I don't know why I'm miming this. They can't see it.
I can't see it either.
But it is delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm miming it, just so you know. Maybe I could do a little
There'll be
post
a
of me on my
link
personal
in
Instagram
the
doing
description
that.
to a video of people doing this. Yeah, maple toffee is delicious.
Maybe this year I will show our listeners how to make tir la neige in my backyard.
Okay, you better invite me for that one, because I didn't get in on
I
the
will.
carving last year, and
Or the pudding.
I was okay to miss out on the pudding.
It was good. It was boozy.
Cool. Do we want to do our announcement before we transition over into your museum?
I think let's keep them in suspense a little bit longer. Because
All right. Sorry, listeners, I threw the
I'm
bone
really
at Victoria
excited,
to
Sloan.
announce our giveaway, and yeah, no.
I'm too excited about my museum.
All right, go for it.
Okay, so now I don't speak Czech, so I've got good old Google Translate to pronounce the name of the museum for me. So in my section, I will be talking about, here we go,
Musea historických nočníků a toalet.
aka the Museum of Historical Chamber Pots and Toilets, or as
Why the
Google likes to call it, the Museums of Historical Potties and Toilets.
Why didn't I think of using Google Translate?
Because I only thought of it after that happened with you. I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't try to pronounce the Czech. Because
Look, I consider it entirely forgivable as someone who was born in Alberta and never left Alberta to entirely butcher the name of any location in Quebec.
that's fair. But I do have French-Canadian ancestry, so I would get, I'm a melting pot of so many things. Italian, German, French, Hungarian. Okay, I'm gonna go and discuss the Museum of Historical Chamber Plots and Toilets now.
Alright, you picked a absurdity
Yeah.
museum, it sounds like. But I am intrigued. I respect you as a historian, and I think there is going to be some significance below the rather humorous surface of it.
So, and I feel like because this is in Prague, I feel like I need to explain why I just randomly chose a museum across the ocean. So I went to Prague 4 years ago. It was a sunny day in March, and the day was misty and full of potential for adventure. And on this day, I went on a little walking tour through the alleyways through Stare Miesto, which is the old town, which, if you have not been to Prague, there are two sections, Stare Miesto and Nové Miesto. Stare Miesto is the more old-fashioned medieval area. My motto is, normally don't go down a creepy alleyway, but if you're going down a creepy alleyway, at least let it be in Stare Miesto. Which is what I did during midday, because rebel. I only had 150 Czech koruna to my name due to a misunderstanding at the exchange place that could not be fixed until I found a proper bank machine. Which, while this sounds like a lot of money until you've been to the Czech Republic, it is in fact only $8.72 Canadian. It isn't a lot, but I managed to buy a little bit of lunch and have a little bit left over. It wasn't enough. When I walked down this alley, I saw a bright yellow building and was instantly magnetized to it due to its advertisements having pictures of little black and white Victorian children surrounded by a garish yellow background.
Do we talk about the Victorian era in, countries that aren't Commonwealth?
No, I was trying to describe it in a way that is
No, I got you. That just threw me for a second. Because I know what you mean in terms of artwork style. It just feels anachronistic.
I know it does.
Please continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
Thank you. No, it's all good. Anyways, the images they had advertising it were just creepy enough for my little graphic-teed, short-haired self to instantly go, yeah, this is what I want to spend my money on. So I was curious. I walked around to the front, and there it was. The Museum of Historical Chamber Pots and Toilets. I instantly wanted to go in, but alas, I didn't have the fees. So it was just something that stuck with me, and for years I actually really regretted not going in, because it was like, oh, well, we have this many chamber pots and toilets for you to see. And I just thought that was fascinating, and I wanted to know more. So this is why I'm talking about it on the podcast. I'm fascinated by aspects of historical life that are not usually talked about in a regular setting. I'm not as interested in, say, specific historical events, and I'm more interested in aspects of historical life. Hence my interest in historical menstruation during our Alias Grey series. So when I was writing this script, I found out that this museum has a 3D exhibition because it closed back in 2018 due to lack of funds. However, they've been open since 2000s in order to help people to learn about the most common aspects of our life that is often not talked about because of taboos. Using the toilet. It is such a reflex, yet we don't even think about how the flushing toilet was only recently invented, and before we were only just shitting in pits. I think that it's incredibly fascinating, and this was and still is a private collection. The owner of the museum is very proud of the fact that, yeah, it is a weird collection to have and a weird history to discuss, but it's important because it is such an integral part of our lives, but it's such a taboo topic that it's often, or we don't even discuss it at all.
Yeah.
This museum has managed to curate a collection that's one of the largest of its kind, focusing not only on toilets and chamber pots, as seen in their official title, but they've also collected a lot of memorabilia affiliated with personal hygiene. While the physical museum is no longer open, the museum still operates an online exhibition in the hopes that they can one day reopen in another location. They did briefly do an exhibition in June/July 2020, but they currently do not have a physical location for the toilets and chamber pots are being kept elsewhere. However, this does not mean that visit museum online is not still valuable. The 3D exhibition is immense. The size of the collection is jaw-dropping. You just see walls to walls. Chamber pots. If you didn't know what they were, you would just think you would be looking at a china pantry with a lot of information up ahead.
I really like, Victoria, how you're stressing the fact that museums aren't just about displaying things, they do have that preservation element. And I think about large museums, how much you don't actually see. If you go to, the Smithsonian in the US, I think you get to see 5% of what they actually have as a public visitor, and everything else is archival. And I think that that's something that we forget as patrons of museums, is we assume that they want to show us everything, so we assume that we get to see everything at once. But that's not really the case, and a huge part of museums is keeping things preserved. And that means not always being in the public eye.
Yes, that shows how this museum, while it is a museum that was based on basically just wanting to discuss the history of hygiene, it also shows a passion for information and education. And the founder of this place, he wrote a whole book on it. And I'm very sad I didn't get to pick this up ahead of time. And even though it's it seems weird that I'm sad that I didn't get to pick up a book about historical toilets, but I am, because I feel like because of lack of funding, this place has been taken away for a while because there just really isn't that chance for you to go and see it in person, because it is an incredible collection. The collection starts in the year 1500 and goes all the way up to the modern period. So you don't only just see the chamber pots, you also see portable toilet, and eventually I did notice there was a golden toilet seat there, and a whole collection of potty training Fisher-Price options. But it's great, and it's because no one really wants to focus on. In a lot of museums, you don't see chamber pots because people think it's gross, it's unprofessional, and that it isn't something that is worth talking about.
Yeah, and I'm not specifically talking perhaps about chamber pots, but I think we do still, unfortunately today, have a connotation that museums should be demonstrating and showing the higher echelons. I sort of glanced over it when I was talking about the cultural shift of, the second half of the 19th century. But what that cultural shift, at least from, the sociological perspective when we're discussing our sort of historiography of sociology, getting away from the idea that there is high culture and low culture, and high culture is valuable and low culture is common and dirty and kind of degrading the lower classes in their culture, getting into the idea of popular culture. So I think something as petty as a chamber pot or as a washroom or as those sorts of things. I mean, we can look to the US and look at, like, the separation in bathrooms that have existed presently or historically. Or we can look at that sort of stuff. And I think it's important to, like, not gloss over things that are common as insignificant.
Yes. And it's so fascinating, this place, because the toilet is important. It is one of the main reasons why, as a society, function today, because we're able to have a clean environment. And it does show my privilege in saying that, is that we are able to have this environment with a working sewage system.
Yes.
So, and I think that this museum does an important job of showing that this wasn't far away in the past. There were Art Deco ones in there. Like, this is not new.
Yeah. That's really significant.
It's interesting because I was reading the reviews of this place on TripAdvisor, all 4 or 5 stars. It's basically people say, well, I walked in because it looked funny, but I ended up learning something.
That's the best. Like, when you think you're gonna get entertainment and they accidentally give you knowledge.
Like, it's great. It's wonderful.
Amazing. It's the Shark Week formula. It is excitement, but at the end of the day, you get something out of it.
Because there isn't much interest in going to the bathroom in the past. Lots of museums, they don't talk about it, they don't share about it. So this museum had quite a collection of famous toilets and chamber pots. So, do you want to know whose historical chamber pot or toilet this museum has?
Yep, please.
Can you give me a couple of guesses?
Pick
the most.
Okay, Mozart's rival, Salieri.
No.
Okay, how many guesses are you gonna make me do?
I'll give you 5. Pick the most obvious ones you would think of.
Okay, but it's in the Czech Republic, right?
Yes, but it's a whole collection of worldwide toilets. It's pretty extensive.
Ooh, okay. Okay, I know there's the rumor about Stalin, but I highly doubt that anything from the Soviet Republic would make it to this. So maybe Henry... no, the British wouldn't give any of that up.
Would you like me to give you a hint?
Yes.
American president.
American President Adams?
Pick the most obvious one of all time. Pretty iconic dude.
Clinton.
Pretty honest.
Oh, Abe.
Yeah, there is a toilet from Abraham Lincoln in there. And then the next one is a famous French person who started a couple of wars.
You say that like it narrows it down.
Post-French Revolution.
Napoleon.
Yeah. So, yes, you can go see the chamber pot that was manufactured for Napoleon Bonaparte's exile on St. Helena's. It's there for you to witness. You can see where people intended for Napoleon Bonaparte to take a shit. Okay, so basically, and I'm just getting into my takeaways because there is a lot of great information, and I think that if people want to look at this, please go check out the online exhibition. It is 3D. You can watch it now. It is free. And there is still a lot more information on the website that you can go and look at as well. Maybe even get the book by the founder. Just support it because they're doing great work trying to give information about personal hygiene that isn't really discussed. My takeaway from this is that even the mundane and kind of gross is worth investigating and studying, and can be exciting to look at. Like, it's staggering looking at the collection. There is this, it's wall to walls of stuff and information, and it's incredible. Even though tourists will come there or just come and look at the exhibition to see where Napoleon or Abraham Lincoln and many more took a piss, they also learn about how society has evolved and changes patterns to what we have today. People will come to this looking to have a laugh, and they are aware of that. They make a joke on the website that the whole place is full of shit. Because, toilet humor. And they do have a label on their bathroom door saying, this is the public's toilet. I think that the important part of being an interdisciplinary podcast is helping people to look at things in their lives and wonder, what is the origins behind it? And because you might be surprised at what you might learn. Yeah.
And I feel like something as mundane as, like, the hygiene in the washroom, you could get into things like medical history, you could get into things disability history, and the way that washrooms, be they standard or be they enhanced accessibility, really exist. I think that there is some really interesting things to take away. I also don't fault anyone for taking humor in the past, or for just wanting to, like, enjoy some of those weirder oddities. So I appreciate you choosing a museum that's that mix of oddities, but probably some good methodology in the way they're selecting their sources. You don't learn anything about the Civil War by looking at Lincoln's toilet, to be sure. But to understand what washrooms of the upper classes looked like in the mid-1800s, there's probably some merit in that.
Yeah, I think it's not only just a cool collection, it's a cool way to show the way history, not just from the Czech Republic, it's not just from the USA, it's worldwide. They show really the progression worldwide of how the modern toilet came to be. And I think that's really, really cool. The 3D tour is awesome, but you don't get a really great picture of what it's like in person. However, the reviews for it speak volumes. Many people were pleasantly surprised at how educational yet fun it was, and I think that's a sign of a good museum, because it manages to inform the public while making it entertaining. And it's a sad thing that due to a lack of funding that this marvelous collection has been temporarily removed from the public eye. But I hope one day that it will have a new location, a new home, and that maybe this time I will have more than 150 koruna to pay for entry.
I hope you make it back in your travels, friend. I think that looking at any virtual exhibition is really valuable in just seeing the ways that you can create flow and create an engaging past. Victoria and I are well aware just how dry any discussion of the past can be, how dry history can be. So absolutely, like, whether there's some kind of novelty value in it, but even just seeing the way that they create flow and the way they lay out their exhibits can be really valuable, you know, whether you're an undergraduate student, whether you're just somebody who's interested in the past, but you want to have discussions. Looking at the ways that you can lay out information between visual and written mediums, vocal mediums, I think that's really significant.
Yeah.
I'm glad you picked something that has a very, like, in-depth kind of virtual aspect, because the museum I picked didn't have that.
The one issue I have is that it's really hard. If you don't understand Czech in certain areas, it's hard to understand. They do have an English option. And I think that they are working on the website, because I think they do want to continue their work, because they did have an exhibition last year, even though the place has been closed down. And I think that hopefully, like, I would really like to see this place come back.
I have a theory that small exhibitions that are only there for a brief period and are in very kind of rented and non-traditional spaces, I will speculate that that is where exhibitions and museums are actually headed, because we are so getting used to gig economies, and we are so getting used to temporary spaces and kind of this, not strictly ad hoc, but this very brief kind of accessibility, because we know everything's going to be cataloged digitally, that I suspect that that's where we're going with things.
Too.
Which is, again, another reason to seek those places out and see how those places look like and see the different ways that you can establish those, the different forms that they can take. Because if you're interested in the past, regardless of age, if you're a young person or an old person, if this is a primary career, a hobby, or a secondary career, and you want to be involved in those sorts of things, it can be really good to see what other people are doing.
Yes. And I think that online exhibitions are great, because if you don't have the means to go in person, it feels so good to feel included by, like, just the fact that you're able to go on a Google tour and, like, just go on a 3D tour just to look around the room. And for me, I felt so excited when I saw the fact that there was a 3D tour for this place. Because even though I wasn't able to go as a 17-year-old on my little grad trip kind of thing, it was an exciting moment for me, because, like, it had lingered in my mind for years, and the thinking is, like, it was a big regret for me that I never got to go. So being able to at least visit virtually, that was so cool, and I still managed to learn a lot from it, and I hope that people will check it out. I'll make sure we put a link into the description to it.
I think we'll also probably repost a link to the virtual exhibition from a previous episode of ours on Black Dance in Canada, just because that had a really good interface for that. And why not plug something a second time if the episode didn't grab you the first time?
I loved that exhibition as well. It was so good.
And also, Dr. Sika Boy was so wonderful to let us interview her and give us her time, especially during the nightmare that the last year and a half has been. Thank you again, Dr. Boy. You were excellent, and we are appreciative. Would you care to announce the Alias Grace giveaway, Victoria?
Yes. Starting the day this episode is posted until September 31st, 2021 at 11:59 p.m., we'll be hosting a giveaway on our Instagram where we will be giving away a copy of Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood, the book which was the basis behind the show we discussed in our previous series. In order to enter the giveaway, we would first like you to go to our Instagram, make sure you're following us, then like, save, and share the giveaway announcement. You can share it in your stories and just tag us, and then we'll know that you've done that. And then in the comments, we would like you to tag 2 of your friends and tell us about your favorite Canadian author of fiction.
Or historical fiction author, or just kind of maybe even a historical Canadian figure.
Just so that we can know that you want to know about more about...
Or to our various non-Canadian listeners, give us a shout out to a piece of historical fiction that you think is really interesting and pertains to wherever you're listening to us from.
Yes, please. So we will make an announcement the day after the contest ends, and we'll direct message the winner for their address. This giveaway is only open to residents of Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia for people over 18 years of age, or those who have the permission to enter from a parent or guardian. Our giveaway is not affiliated with Instagram or any of the podcast directories that our show is distributed by. We just really want to share this book with you all.
And listeners, I'm going to let you know right now, Victoria's absolutely going to sneak some kind of goodie in with that book beyond just a copy of the book.
Yeah.
And begrudgingly, I'm going to admit it's probably going to be pretty great because Victoria has really good taste in goodies.
Thank you, friend. And I do work by a candy shop and a tea shop, so, pretty damn great.
That's not at all the reason that I'm your friend, Victoria, by the way.
Thank you. I know, but, I mean, it is a pretty good reason to be my friend, is that I will buy you.
It's a good perk.
So, thank you all for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you all for listening to us. The Instagram is in the description, along with various source materials from this episode. The rest of our social media is down there. We have a Patreon down there if anyone feels like contributing to us. We do try to strive and create good content for you. We try to also give a lot of good resources beyond just our own words and thoughts. So if you feel like supporting us on Patreon, we have some very accessible levels that we invite you to check out. There's also membership perks available to you.
Thank you all for listening. I hope you've all learned a lot. I had so much fun with this. And I know, I was thinking, oh, this toilet thing would be wacky, but I actually feel like there is something profound that came from that and exciting. I liked it. I learned so much from you, Sloan. Thinking about music as a primary source is actually, a fascinating idea, and I wanted to discuss it further, actually. Maybe on another episode.
Music as a primary source. Something to delve into if you're somebody who likes the past but finds it really dry, or likes the past but finds it very isolating and hoity-toity and exclusionary. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the best ways to look at the past is try to find a new angle. Try to find something that you don't see talked about.
And not, even in, a hipster way. You don't have to, as an academic, be trying to find the angle that nobody's looked at before. You are going to need to participate in the scholarly discussion. You are going to need to build off of work that exists. But there is a lot of merit in what's something that you think is true, but haven't heard somebody else point out as being true yet.
Before we sign off, Sloan and I would like to acknowledge that MacEwan University, this podcast, and all the content we create are located and produced on Treaty 6 territory. This land has traditionally and continues to be a home, place of gathering, and meeting ground for many Indigenous peoples. This includes the Nakota Sioux, Nitsitapi, Métis, Saulteaux, and Cree First Nations. You can find our podcast on all of your favorite podcast directories and on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at hist@mac, Instagram, which is at history@mac, or on Facebook under the name of the Interdisciplinary History Group at MacEwan. We will leave links to these social media pages and our blog in the description box of your favorite podcast directory. If you would like to be a guest or have a suggestion for a future episode or blog post topic, please let us know by shooting an email to interdisciplinaryhistgroupmu@gmail.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. Stay tuned for our next recording. Goodbye. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Wear a mask.